We're talking soccer. Don't change the channel. Only a couple
and
days.
we're women. Don't change the channel.
Only a couple days removed from England's devastating loss to Iceland and the resignation of their manager, a familiar name is being mentioned as a possible replacement. Current U.S. men's manager, Jurgen Klinsmann. Now, many Brit fans are pushing for Klinsmann in England, even though the U.S. lost 4-0, or 4-0, as they say in soccer, in the semifinals of Copa America to Argentina, the #1 team in the world. They didn't even get a shot on goal in that game. So, Kate, we're going to start with you. Why isn't USA men's soccer better?
You got to follow the money here in a lot of ways. And by that, I mean the cost of becoming good at soccer in this country is astronomical compared to the cost of becoming good at soccer in other countries. Like, all around the world, soccer is a street sport. You can walk out your door and find kids playing 3-on-3 in the street, where you can learn the type of fundamentals and skills and innate knowledge of soccer that we often do with basketball here. Because here in the States, basketball is more of the street sport, where you can go out to your playground and you can learn the skills that become in your DNA that lead to the kind of creative, interesting, sophisticated play that we see out of our NBA players, and why we have the best basketball players in the world. But here in the U.S., when soccer, you can't walk out your door and go find a 3-on-3 street game, let alone an 11-11 game somewhere in your playground. So when you don't have that ability to do that, which is cost-free, you end up having to create structured environments where you can go play soccer, which costs tons of money. And then you have to pay fees, coaching fees. And it becomes an elitist sport in the U.S. like it is nowhere else. Keep that in mind. This is a sport almost everywhere else in the world where you don't have to have riches and money to be able to play. But here in the U.S., you better have a lot of money in your pocket, and it becomes a pay-for-play system. And it's why when we watch games like U.S. losing to Argentina 4-0 and then losing 1-0 to Colombia in the third-place game, it's why our guys are not competing at the world-class level. We certainly have had great moments, but when you look at it all-encompassing, we have not had the kind of elite, world-class team that truly, when we step on the field against a Germany or an Argentina or a Spain, consistently competes. So you can point out 2009 and we beat Spain, or when we beat Brazil. Those are the moments where we have played well. But if you look across the years, we are a second-tier team, and a lot of that is because of our pay-for-play model.
I think there are some other things at play here also. One of them is the fact that you just don't see soccer, men's soccer particularly, on TV in the same way that you see other sports, right? So kids want to grow up and emulate the people they see on TV. And that's going to be NBA, NFL, Major League Baseball in this country for the most part. It just is. Also, Americans, we really love to be immediately excellent whenever we compete with other nations. We just do. And the other nations, in this case in soccer, have also put the same resources and want just as much. That's difficult for us, because now you're talking about the best in the world, not just the best in our own little fiefdom. I think I compare it to men's tennis, where we've been really good at times, but we don't have the infrastructure and the programs in place that are being able to produce men's tennis players. And men's tennis training and participation worldwide is up and strong. And that is very difficult for us to compete against.
I think there's a lot of factors at play here. I think obviously there is the level of elitism that is required. But there are other sports in our country, like hockey, that costs a ton of money, that manages to still be a world power. U.S. is always in the gold medal game, right? And that's partly because other countries can't afford to compete at an elitist level with a sport like that.
Playing that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then you bring in Jane's aspect. So not only is it super expensive to play here, but if you are watching the way the market works, you look at the people who are making the most money playing and who are finding the most fame and success, and those are NBA, NFL, MLB. So the best athletes are going into those sports. So now you've taken what is a tremendously large pool of athletes in America when compared to smaller countries that consistently beat America. There's more athletes to choose from, high-level athletes. A lot of them go off and play other sports. So now you're left with a diluted pool. Once you get to that diluted pool of athletes who decide to specialize in soccer despite the fact that they can make money elsewhere, now they have to be financially capable of competing in it. Then you add in the fact that it's not right now financially beneficial to most youth clubs in the U.S. to try to prop up a single or several like really elite players. Right now, the way things work in the U.S. is that those youth clubs, their end goal is to create a successful team and to work towards copycatting what they see in other countries, the format that they're using, the style of play that they're using, the soccer academies that they create, the number of coaches that they get qualified. They copycat different strategies from different places, but what they don't do is allow for the fact that a youth club can make a ton of money off of one single player who gets really good. And then they get fees going back and forth to allow them to go play in other leagues in other countries where there is a ton of money. Instead, our focus is on creating a good squad. That's great, but what will end up benefiting on the whole more is to find those individual great players who then financially support the clubs, who then allow for more scholarships for players that can't afford to play because it's too elite for them, and then it builds. So it becomes a whole process. So part of it is just that the tax that they're using aren't appropriate.
The diluted player argument feels like it's one that we've heard before, and sometimes I reject it because when you look back over the last few years about which soccer players are the most transcendent on this planet, if you leave aside Ronaldo because he has a bigger build, and you could argue that he could have been a basketball player, but then you look at Messi, or then you look at Zidane, or you look at some of the Spanish players, we're talking about like 5'7", 5'10" guys. So I'm saying, no, my point is only that even in a diluted pool of U.S. athletes, 315 million people, even if we diluted it because we have football and we have basketball, we should still be able to take the leftover couple thousand guys who have risen to some sort of elite level and hone them into a world-class level.
Your argument then is that soccer, perhaps comparatively to other sports, is more about training someone into greatness versus a natural ability combined? Because for me, when I say the best players aren't, I'm not saying, oh, imagine if LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Cam Newton, that's not what I'm saying. It's not about physical stature. It's not about overpowering, outrunning, all that stuff. It's about players that are uniquely equipped to dominate a soccer game. And we don't find them if they're doing other things. We don't even know that they could be that great player who could be honed into an elite, like European, international level player. It's not about just the dominant build. It's about, do we ever even see them participating? Because as you know, we're all athletes. Like, you can look at someone and say, I would have absolutely pitted that person, Cam Newton, let's say, as an NBA player. But he never picked up a football, and so then he went and played basketball. I could have looked at this. I could have looked at Steve Nash and said, Steve Nash, you're a soccer player. You're not a point guard, right? You look at all those things. We don't ever see them. They are not put in a position to figure out whether they have whatever it is, that magic in them that when pinned with the right skill set and the right training becomes a soccer star.
Right. My point was only that to get to a next generation, which can then inspire and have a soccer ball be the first thing you pick up in America, you're going to have to take a diluted pool of talent and have the coaching to have them inspire a generation. And we can't just assume that we're going to get better athletes. We have to figure out a way where the athletes who do go to soccer get the quality of coaching that can then allow them to compete on a world-class level so that soccer does become more ingrained in society.
If only they could do what the women in this country are doing.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Title IX. That's a Title IX conversation.
I did notice when you said everyone at this table is an athlete, you clearly neglected this side of the table.
I'm so sorry.
You've never seen my dodgeball skills.
He's a great sand surfer. Check his Instagram.